Jai Shri Ram. Janaki Kanta Smaranam. Jai Jai Ram Ram. Siyavar Ramachandra ki Jai. Bolo Bharat Mata ki Jai. We'll first begin with a song. Ulagam yavayum tamula akalum nilai perutalum nikalum ningalam alagila vilayatudayar அவர் தலைவர் அவர்க்கே சரணாங்களே. I suppose you all can identify from where I have picked up this song. This is the very first verse of the famous Tamil epic known as Kamba Ramayana. This has been in news recently, and if you see this picture, you will realize why it has been in news. When Prime Minister Modi ji visited Srirangam just before the inauguration of the Ram temple at Ayodhya, he was present in this mantap, which is called as Kamba Mantapam. This is where Kambar, the Tamil poet, had originally done the first reading of his epic known as Kamba Ramayana. And this is where the scholars of the day accepted it as a very important religious poem. So having known this history and the fact that Ranganatha is called as Ikshvaku Kuladanam, that is, the Ranganatha here in Srirangam was worshipped by the kings of the Ikshvaku lineage in which Rama appears. And therefore, this is a temple that is to be worshipped before you start worshipping Rama. And having known this history, he was treated to these poems here by Sikil Gurucharan. You look at this poem very carefully, it does not really mention Rama anywhere. It does not mention Rama anywhere because Rama belongs to all people, all faiths, and he is a historical figure who appeals to the Indian psyche. And therefore, here, the nature of God is described as the one who creates the earth, not just this earth, but all the earths, all the worlds, the 14 worlds that are there, which is said in our scriptures. They are protected, and when the time comes, they are destroyed and then recreated. All this is done as a part of a Leela, a game by the Creator, the Parabrahman. And he is the real chief. Talaivar is chief. And he says, we are doing Sharanagati to that chief. The concept of Sharanagati is very important. Sharanagati does not just mean abject surrender. It means that you continue to do your duty, you continue to carry on your life as usual, but with the complete surrender of the results of the actions to the great God. So right in the first poem of the Ramayana, you have some life lessons to be learned. One is that you should start the day or your work or whatever you're going to embark upon in your life with an invocation of the divine. That's very important, and that's why we have started with Jai Shri Ram today. And the second thing is that the Sharanagati is a very important aspect of self-realization and attaining mukti. So Ramayana is a kavya which is described as a Sharanagati kavya. That means there are so many people who have done Sharanagati to Rama during the course of the events of Ramayana. Some of them are human beings, some of them are animals, some of them are birds, some of them are Rakshasas. All of them have done Sharanagati to the Lord. And this is emphasized throughout. And what is going to come in the next 10,500 or so verses of Kamban, he puts it in a nutshell right in the beginning, Sharanagati. I've called this series as Life Lessons from Srimad Ramayana. And today I'll be giving just the introduction. And in the subsequent sessions every month, I'll be covering the life lessons that you can get from each chapter of the Ramayana, the Bala Kandam, Ayodhya Kandam, Aranya Kandam, Kishkinda Kandam, Sundara Kandam, and Yuddha Kandam. Maybe we'll require 1 or 2 sessions for some of these longer chapters. So to put it in the proper perspective, we should know what is Ramayana. That seems to be a very silly question to ask an enlightened audience like you. But then it is necessary to do so. And that is because our concept of Ramayana has changed from the ancient times to the present times. By the present times, I mean after the advent of English education, the Englishman's curriculum. We are often taught that Ramayana, Mahabharata, and all these stories are just mythology. Is it really mythology? Do you think it is mythology? I don't think so. But this is how we have been taught for generations, right from the time of the Englishmen and in the English educational system, which also has now crept into the vernacular, that all these things never really happened. They are just products of imagination. I don't think this can be farther from truth. Could you call Ramayana as an epic? Of course, it is an epic because it's sufficiently long to be called an epic and sufficiently dramatic. But an epic just traces the story of a hero from the beginning to the end, his victories, sometimes his trials, sometimes his tribulations, but most of the time it focuses on the victories that the hero gets. But really, there is not much to take away from these so-called epics like, Odyssey or Iliad, etc., which are classically considered as epics. There's not really much to take away for your life from these epics. Ramayana has got a lot of life lessons to teach us, and therefore it is just much more than just an epic. I think it is slightly demeaning to call it as just an epic. Is it a Purana? You've heard of things like Shiva Purana, Vishnu Purana, etc. These are all stories that are written by the sages, including Veda Vyasa. They have done this to inculcate in people some faith, some good character, and also for people to become godly minded. But these are not really records of history. Puranas, nobody knows whether they really happened or not. The people who wrote the Puranas did not live at the time of the events that the Puranas describe. So it is, to some extent, a product of imagination, I would say. But what is Ramayana and what is Mahabharata? They are not called Puranas. It's not Rama Purana. It is the Itihasa. What does the word Itihasa mean? In Sanskrit, it is Itihasa, which means thus it was, so it happened. So it is actually a record of what happened. It is written by contemporaries. Valmiki was a contemporary of Rama. And so you can safely assume that this is a factual history. Now, the problem is we have been always taught that it is not so. And I think this has been a systematic assassination of Indian history by the Englishmen. You've heard of Warren Hastings, who was a fairly good governor general. Of course, he got impeached towards the end of his career. But then he developed an interest in Indology. He started studying some of these epics. And he found a fantastic amount of material in all these Vedas, Upanishads, and the Itihasas. And he said this would be very dangerous if people got to know this in general. Therefore, in the Imperial College of London, which trained people for service in India, for the armed forces, for the civil service, and also for the ecclesiastical persons, they were systematically told, I think it was a propaganda that was set in. And this propaganda says that all the ancient wisdom of India is all just bunkum. It's all a myth. None of this really happened. And it's far better to study the literature of the Greeks, the Romans, the Englishmen. And this was perpetuated by subsequent authors from India, English educated authors, who also subscribe to the same theory. But we should not believe in all these theories. We should actually develop a spirit of inquiry. And that is the third learning lesson for you. Whatever somebody tells you, don't just take it at its face value. Go into the depth, go back to the sources, check what they have done, and check and also see the motive of the person who's saying it. With all these things, you'll be able to come to the truth. So, Ramayana and Mahabharata are actually itihasas, records of history of what really happened. Now, let us see how this develops. The story, as you know, first was written by Valmiki, but how did Valmiki get to know about it? He got to know about it from Narada. So he actually goes and asks Narada, you tell me about a person who's got some great qualities about whom I can write an epic. And Narada tells him that, so-and-so king was there, he's there among us. And this is Rama's story, and this is what you have to write about. So whatever Narada tells Valmiki is an abridged version of the entire Ramayana. But I think this is the real essence of Ramayana. And so this is called as Moola Ramayana, the basis of Ramayana. And this is put together as an abridged form called Sankhepa Ramayana, the first 100 slokas, which are placed first in the Balakandam of Valmiki Ramayana. And then Valmiki goes on to develop this short story into a very long poem. And this is now, from Itihasa, it has now become a Kavya. Kavya means it should have all those literary embellishments. It should have that poetic meter. It should have the nice sounding language, euphonic to recite. It should also have a lot of dramatic elements. Why? Because people have to read it. Only when people read it, they become interested, and then they get to know what are the truths behind it. They can pick out their life's lessons from this kavyam. So there is a necessity to sort of add elements to the basic story. And that is what Valmiki did by expanding it into a 24,000 long, sloka long poem. Now, we have a lot of life lessons right from the first verses of the Valmiki Ramayana. Tapasvadhyaya niratam tapasvi vakvitamvaram naradam paripapracha Valmiki munipungavam konvasmin sampratam loke gunaman kascha viryavan dharmagyascha kritagyascha satyavakyo dridhavradaha. What he asks Narada, you tell me about a person who is existing today, about whom I expect that all these qualities should be there in that person. So you tell me about that person. So he lists, he gives a requirement list, a big long list of things which the ideal hero should have. And here what happens is, there is a lot of things to be learned right from this first sloka. What is the character of a guru? Valmiki goes to Narada and Narada becomes his guru. So he has what is called as tapas swadhyaya niratam. He is a man of tapas. Tapas means penance. Penance does not necessarily mean that you go to the forest, stand among, around fire, lifting one leg up, not eating for years together. That is one form of tapas, but that is not tapas all about. Tapas means it is basically a self-denial. You deny yourself the pleasures of daily life so that you can focus on the bigger principles. And that is what is Narada capable of doing. And that is what all big Maharishis are capable of doing. So a good guru must be a man of tapas. Tapasvadhyaya nirtam. Swadhyaya nirtam means he is capable of learning himself. Apart from whatever he has got guidance from his guru, he should be able to develop that philosophy. He should be able to self-learn these things. That is called Swadhyaya Niratam. So a person who only repeats whatever his teacher has said does not become a great teacher. The teacher should develop his own methods, his own principles. his own thoughts. And by that, he will be able to communicate better with his students. So these are two important characteristics of the guru that we must have. The other meaning of tapas is also maunam. Maunam means silence. It is not that always you teach by saying a lot of words. You can also communicate just by the mental resonance with the student. That is also possible. You can communicate a lot through just mental resonance. And that is what a great guru is capable of doing. A great guru is not somebody who shouts from the rooftop. A great guru is not somebody who keeps appearing on the YouTube every other day. A great guru is a person who's able to communicate through silence. That silence gives a lot of meaning, because that gives the student a space to reflect upon himself. The other thing is, when the teaching occurs, the words have to be proper. That is what is called as Vak Vidam. Vak Vidam means a person of clear speech. But just clear speech is not the meaning. If you read just the words, they convey a meaning. But then there will always be an inner meaning which will become apparent when you read the commentaries on Ramayana. Vak Vidam Varam. That means a person who is able to construct his thoughts, put them across, and there should be no ambiguity in the words. These are all the characteristics of a good guru. Now, this also tells us what should be the nature of a student. See, Valmiki is a very big rishi. He is called Muni Pungavam. That means one of the greatest among the rishis, one of the purest among the rishis. His knowledge is immense. But when he wants to know about Rama, about whom he does not know so far, he has to learn it from Narada. He goes and what the word used is paripapracha. He goes and asks the question. The question is not asked in a casual manner. It is not asked in a manner as if, oh, I know so much, but I just want to know a little bit about this. That is not the attitude. The attitude is full of vinayam. He is a person who knows that he does not know about this. And therefore, he goes with the right kind of attitude, with the right kind of supplicant attitude to the guru, and asks what really happens there. The other important word here is asmin sampratam loke. That means in this present world. They are living in a particular era in time, whatever that era may be, maybe 5,000 years before, maybe 6,000 years before, whatever it is. At that period of time, is there somebody who has all these qualities? And what are those qualities that he's asking about? One who is virtuous, valorous, righteous, thankful, truthful in words, steadfast, has a good disposition, minds the welfare of all beings, knowledgeable, capable, pleasant to look at, self-composed, can control anger, brilliant, not jealous, powerful in destroying enemies. 16 qualities, a big list of things, all great qualities. These are the kind of qualities that must be there in every hero. A person who appears on celluloid screen smashing up 10 villains and in one stroke is not really the hero. The real hero should have all these characteristics. So you see how many life lessons come from just the first two verses of Valmiki Ramayana. One is Guru's qualities. The next lessons to learn for us is what should be the Sishya's approach, and what are the ideal man's traits. And if we can even get a small part of these, we'll be moving towards that ideal which Rama was. So Narada gives him the reply, and he says, it's actually very difficult to find a person with all these qualities rolled into one. But I know of one such person, and that is Rama. He belongs to the Ikshvaku Vamsa. And I am not the only one who is saying this. A lot of people have heard about him, about his, and he is there now with us. Janeshtrutaka, people are hearing about him. And he is the Niyatatma Mahavidyo Dutiman Dritiman Vasi Buddhiman Nitiman Vagmi Sriman. And so all the qualities that you ask for are there in this person. So this is a person about whom you should know. And I will tell you the story of this person. That's what Narada says. Not only those 16 qualities, but he also adds several more of his own, being level-headed, having clarity of thought, being a protector of dharma, and with no rival, nobility, forgiving, so many other qualities which can be added on to Rama's qualities. So naturally, a person with such an appealing quality, of such great nature, has not an appeal just within India, but all across Asia. And you can see that in Sanskrit itself, there are many, many works which describe, apart from Valmiki Ramayana, which is the original, there is an Adhyatma Ramayana, there is an Ananda Ramayana. And then in Tamil, of course, we have Ramavataram, which is Kamba Ramayanam. Then there is Pasurapadi Ramayana, which is composed from the various poems of the Alvars, the 12 Alvars. And here, the great thing about this Pasurapadi Ramayanam is these Alvars lived at various periods of time, right from the 5th century to the 9th century. And from their works, lines have been taken out here and there, one line from one Alvar, one line from another Alvar, one line from another Alvar, and they have all been put together to form a whole Ramayana story. That is Pasurapadi Ramayana. And Ramayana is such a compelling story that it becomes a muse for all creative persons. People do dramas about him. People do, songs about him. Tyagaraja has written so many songs, and there is actually a Tyagaraja Ramayana also. So in Telugu, we have Sri Ranganatha Ramayana, and we have in Kannada Pampa Ramayana. Actually, there are many, many versions in each of these languages. I'm just picking up one or two examples. And the ones that have really stood the test of time. Like, for example, the Adhyatma Ramayanam Kilipattu, which was written by Tunjathu Ezhuthachan in Malayalam. Of course, all of us know about Ramcharitmanas. Then there is a Krittivasi Ramayana in Bangla, and there is Giridhar Ramayanam in Gujarati. Not just these languages, several more: Assamia, Maithili, Konkani, Marathi, Odia, Urdu, and even in English. One of my favorite authors, Arshia Sattar, has written the entire Valmiki Ramayana, all the 24,000 slokas in English. And she has also written several other books on Ramayana, for looking at each of the characters in Ramayana. So these are easy for us to read because they are in English. And there are stories of Rama across the whole of Asia, in Myanmar, Indonesia, Cambodia, Laos, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Thailand. Sri Lanka is actually full of so many places that have intimate association with Rama. So I think this is really one of those books which have been made into many iterations, many versions. In software, we say version 1.0, version 2.0, etc. Here, this is run into 300 versions, at least 300 versions, maybe even more if you increase your scope of counting. And that is the appeal of Ramayana for so many centuries. The other aspect of Ramayana is also about what happened to the concept of Bharatavarsha. Bharat as a political entity did not exist as a single nation. It was a land of multiple nations. They say 56 nations were there, and there are multiple other principalities, smaller kingdoms, etc. And often these were at war with each other, and they were not really on the best terms. But in spite of all that, the people of this whole area, which is called as Bharatavarsha, which includes even part of Pakistan, Afghanistan, and some parts of the Eastern Asia, this entire area came under the umbrella of the Vedas and the Itihasas. And I think these were the real uniting factors, because whether the Rig Veda is recited by a Kashmiri in the Kashmiri school or in the Tamil Nadu school, the words will be identical, because it has been passed through generations through oral tradition without a single word being written. And this has really united the whole country. Therefore, the identity of Bharatavarsha depends on the Vedic structure and also on the Itihasa. So I think you go to any nook and corner of India, you will find some legend associated with Rama, some story that people tell you about what happened when Rama came down over there, etc. This is often dismissed as just made up stories by the Western civilization. But this is not really so. You don't place your trust just on what is there in epigraphic records or what is there in the books. In fact, even the stories of the Bible, nobody knows really whether they really happened or not. The only proof of them is in the Bible. If you can accept that, why not accept Ramayana as a story that really happened in the past? And people generally have no problems in accepting Rama as a real person who has lived in this country. But the Western educated mind has a lot of problem in accepting this. That is because of the brainwashing, which I talked about earlier. So I think more than any king or more than any other political force, it is the itihasas, especially Rama. I will tell you why Rama a little later, which has united this whole nation and made it stay as a single cultural and religious entity. While all this is happening for the last 60, 70 years in Tamil Nadu, there is a feeling that is being spread by some persons in authority, etc., that Rama is not a god of the Tamil people. He is alien to this Tamil state. But I don't think this is true at all. And I'm going to give you evidence of why I think it is not true. I'm going to give you evidence right from the Sangam literature. Any die-hard Tamil enthusiast who denies Rama will accept what is there in the Sangam literature. And in the Sangam literature, there is a story from Agananuru in which a woman, actually there is no need to mention about Rama in this whole poem at all, in this poem of Agananuru. What really happens is there is a woman who is wooed by a man, and he says he will get married to her, but because of his business and other concerns, he has to leave and go before the marriage, and he does not return. When he does not return, the people of the village, they start, there are murmurs that happen, and then finally it rises into a big pitch, and people keep on saying, oh, this man has cheated her. A lot of noise there. And one day, suddenly this man appears and he holds her hand. And when he holds her hand, the entire discontent among the people of the village completely stops because he has kept his word. Now, to see that sudden subsidence of the noise that is there in the society, the poet gives an example. And the example given is from the Ramayana. This story is not there in any other part of Ramayana, in any other kind of Ramayana which I've read. And that means this is a story that has been told by people over and over again, and that's a familiar story to the people, and that is why they are using that particular example. So the story is that when Rama came down to cross the sea to cross over to Lanka, he stops and he calls his council of people, Neelan, Angadan, all these generals who are there in the army, Hanuman, etc. All of them get together and they have a meeting. And the meeting occurs on the seaside under a banyan tree. It's the evening and there is a lot of high tide and there is a lot of noise from the river, from the sea. There's a lot of noise from the wind that rustles the leaves in the tree. And there are also the birds which are screeching away over there. All this is causing a lot of noise. Rama gets disturbed in his thoughts and he just waves his hand. And when he waves his hand, all these birds fall silent, the leaves fall silent, the sea falls silent. So it is exactly like that when this man came and held the arm of this girl, the entire noise from the whole town had stopped. So you see, this is an example which is not really necessary over here, but is being given because people know this story. And this is a story that has been circulated in Tamil Nadu only. I don't think there is any such story in any other part of any other kind of Ramayana that you can read. Similarly, people also accept Silappatikaram. Silappatikaram was written actually by a Jain poet called Ilangovadigal. And in this, the people who are singing about the praises of Rama are ordinary, cowherdesses. They are holding, they are not adept in Sanskrit literature and all that. So they do not know about those imported gods and all that. They know whatever they have been worshipping all along in their lineage. And they have been worshipping Rama, they have been worshipping Krishna. So they sing about Rama and Krishna. And that is what there's a synopsis of the Ramayana here also, in the words of the cowherdesses who are Aichiyar Kuravai. In this particular part of Silappatikaram, the story of Rama comes. Tambiyodu kan pondu sovaranum pormudiyat tulilangai kattezhutha sevagan seer kelada seviyenna sevi. That means it is not just that they are giving the story, but they are saying, what is the use of a ear which has not heard of these stories? So you can see how much that story was venerated by the people in those Sangam times. So these are not imported gods. They have been there with us for several centuries. Similarly, there's another story, which is a very interesting story. Again, you don't find a parallel to this in any other place. So there is a bard who goes to a big, let's say a king, and he sings the king's praises. The king becomes very joyous, and so he takes out from his treasury. He just takes a whole armful of all the jewels, resplendent jewels, and he gives it to the bard as a prize. And that man bundles it up in his cloth and he takes it to his village. And when he opens it, all his relatives come there. They are so excited to see such jewels. They've never seen such things in their life because they come from a poor background. And when they all take it, what a thing that is to be worn in the finger, they wear it in their toes. A finger, something that is to be worn in the wrist, they wear it in their ears. And this sort of confusion is there among them because they're so excited. And for this also, the poet gives an example. This is exactly like what the monkeys did when Sita threw her jewels down into the Kishkinda. The monkeys caught hold of it. They also did exactly the same thing. They did not know which ornament should go where, so they kept putting it everywhere. And that is exactly how these bards' relatives behave. So this is a story that is there in Purananuru, a story which doesn't have a parallel anywhere else in of course, the handing over of jewels is there in Valmiki Ramayana. It is also there in Kamba Ramayana. But that is when Rama comes back. Sugriva hands it back to him. This is this sort of a story that the monkeys enjoyed these things is not there in any other. So these are all local stories. That means local things that have been made up by people and for generations. So they have venerated these stories, and there is absolutely no reason to say that Rama is alien to the Tamil people. So let us not blindly follow the propaganda. A lie told repeatedly and forcefully does not become the truth. And that is the life's lessons for us. I would like to stop this first part of the talk with a mention about what is called as humility. Kamban is one of the greatest poets in Tamil literature. He is called as Kavi Chakravarti. And in the beginning, he says, my trying to do this whole Ramayana Kavya is just akin to a small cat, which is standing by the side of the ocean of milk, Parkadal, that is ocean of milk. And it wants to lap up all the milk that is there in the ocean into it, because it's got such a great desire to lap up all the milk and drink it. I mean, isn't it silly for a cat to think like that? Similarly, it is also very silly of me to think that I can, encompass all the greatness of Ramayana into a story like this, into my poems. I'm sure there are some mistakes in what I have written, but those mistakes are only mine. They are not the mistakes of Rama. They are not the errors on the part of the story. They are not the sins on the part of Rama. Everything, whatever faults you may find, the faults are all mine and not of the story. So this is the humility with which a great poet submits himself. And so let us also learn to follow that example. One more life lesson, let's be humble. And as you become more and more advanced in your knowledge, as you become more and more learned, actually, generally what we see is people become, their ego becomes inflated. But actually, it should be the other way around. The more you become learned, the more humility will be there in you. So I'll stop here and we'll move on to the next part in the subsequent video.